Hello and welcome to the MassTLC Professional Communities Meeting. We welcome each of you today and thank you for joining us. Today we are going to talk about women change agents in tech. Just a quick, a little bit about who MassTLC is. We are the Mass Technology Leadership Council, the largest council in the region for tech companies. We are here to accelerate growth, innovation, and the development of an inclusive tech ecosystem. If you have any questions about our organization, please send me a note. A big thank you to our community sponsors, Cybereason and Nuance. Without them, we can't do programming like this all year long. And of course, also, we are always grateful for our global sponsors who also help in programming and all the programs we offer our community all year long. Today's discussion will be led by and moderated by Jessica Liao, R&D Director for the CTO Office at Nuance. And here are the fantastic lineup of panelists. You're about to meet them. But before I hand it over to her, just a few things. This is a webinar. I will be moderating the chat. So please send me your ideas, your questions, any comments. They will be heard if you want them to be heard. Jessica will lead the conversation for the next 30 or 40 minutes. We will do our best to hold the last 10 to 15 minutes for comments and questions. And she'll do her best to try and get them answered. So just know I will be moderating the chat. And with that, I am going to go to the next slide and turn it over to Jessica.
Thanks, Nayla. Nayla, if you could move to the next slide, would be. We want to welcome the MassTLC members and the Nuance employees. We're very happy to celebrate this last day of Women's History Month with this event. And as we raise the next generation, it's important that we share and lift each other up with our stories. And this is how history is written. This is how we make progress, and our stories really matter. I'll be moderating this discussion today with our panelists, Ann Hartunian, Chris Harris, Shweta Munat, Anu Durfee, and Janalyn Dupree. They span a variety of roles across product development and in particular in the healthcare business here at Nuance. I have a few questions just to spark the discussion, and we really want to make this relevant to you, so we're very interested to hear about your questions and comments, so feel free to post them in the chat. You'll see on this slide a number of words, and we each chose a word that sums up our thoughts. Oh, Nayla, if you could keep, thanks. On the slide before, on the second slide. And on this slide, you'll see a number of words, and with each word we chose, this sums up our thoughts about Women's History Month, and you'll hear these as themes throughout the discussion. And we also want to hear from you what words, what sentiments come to mind when you think about Women's History Month. If you feel free to post these in the chat either now or throughout the discussion. So we'll just, for my first question, I want to focus on our Nuance values. And as with many organizations, we have our core values. And one of them, which I find very inspiring, is to think big, which as change agents, we all embody. And Anu, as a product manager, for thinking big, what does that mean to you?
Thanks, Jessica. So I often say that product managers are the spray foam that glues all of the various roles together when it comes to launching and maturing a product. And so my team is developing products that don't exist in the market today. So oftentimes our clients don't know that this is something that they want until we show it to them or show them that concept. And the thing that I love most about my job is hearing customers say, I didn't even know that I wanted that, but now that you've told me it's possible, I need it now. And in order to develop products like this, you need to take a step back. You need to take a look at the big picture, stop thinking within the constraints that are put on us in everyday life, and really understand the pain point or problem that we're trying to solve and go after it.
That's great. From And as one of our Nuance Fellows, a special distinguishment that we make for our top technologists, what does thinking big mean to you?
So, Jessica, to continue what Anu said, so once product management defines this, what is it the customer wants, or even customer doesn't know what they want, and they give them the concepts, then the role of technologists comes into picture, how to build this system in a way that will solve customer problem and at the same time will be forward looking. And to me, think big means being comfortable with the discomfort, not knowing all the answers. Because when you're building these big systems, you don't know all the answers. You have a goal that you want to reach in the end, but in order to get there, you don't have all the answers to your questions, and you have to explore. You have to move fast, you have to make certain decisions as you go. And to me, another Nuance value intervenes nicely with this concept is being curious. This curiosity at any step adds to your journey of finding the end answer, or maybe you don't find the end answer and it just keeps going. To me, the think big somehow aligns with what Dante said. He said that it pleases me as much to doubt as to know. So this doubt is always in us. And it's a good feeling to have. It's okay to doubt every time. But that's what makes you think big in the end. One more thing that I would like to add, in this think big process as a technologist, it's very hard to reach to your goal alone. You need the support. You need people to believe what you're trying to build. You need people to jump into your train of vision and just embrace the journey with you.
Yeah, like that, embrace the journey and the support. We all need it. And it's very inspiring with that, both Anu and Anne. It's also interesting to see how we continue to grow and develop in our field, you know, and Shweta, as a program manager, what do you think is the #1 most important skill for your role? And what do you do to keep learning and improving?
Thanks, Jessica. I wish I could answer that there's one top skill that I use in day-to-day life. There are a few things that have helped me in my career a lot. I want to start by saying organization as a program manager, managing complex program, there's a lot of chaos. And I'm not saying chaos in a negative way. There are a lot of vibrant teams involved in developing a program, delivering a program with great ideas and ambiguity. Being organized helps me assess what gets prioritized, which resources get engaged at what point, what needs escalation, what needs pushback. So I think of that as one of the important skills. I also bank on building trust and relationship with people at all levels. Think about a leader who meets with me, let's say 2 hours a month. I want to make sure the leader trusts me to deliver her vision. And also, there's the engineers on the program, they're 10 times smarter than me. I want to build trust with the engineer so she knows I understand her pain points and I can help her through it. I also feel like I have to be humble enough to know that I don't know everything. As a program manager, the scope of learning is endless. And the more you learn, the better you can support the program. So I'm going to say, like, I have 3 skills that have helped me through my career so far.
Great. I love hearing all these themes come together. Jana, as a UX researcher, what is your approach?
Yeah, so there's a lot of things that I think I try to do on a regular basis to kind of help learn and grow. Much like Shweta, this kind of appetite to learn, or this like building on what we've already done is really important to me. As a UX researcher, part of my job is to be generally very curious and observant. And so I spend a lot of my time watching people and trying to figure them out. And I think that really actually helps me figure myself out as well. I would say that my number one skill that I use almost every day is empathy. I need to empathize with our users and the problems that they're facing and trying to solve and kind of helping them work through that. But I also need empathy for my coworkers and people in other roles as well. So understanding someone's perspective, their goal, their motivation, it really makes it easier for me to collaborate with them and kind of get to this shared desired outcome. So if we're all trying to move in the same direction, it really helps to know where people are coming from. It's a skill, it's a practiced skill. It's something that I try to practice every day and kind of build up. And it can be really hard sometimes to kind of like take a step back and see what other people are thinking or where they're coming from. But it's, you know, it's very empowering to kind of like be able to connect with somebody on that level.
Yeah, so a lot around the connection to all the organization and people to make everything happen. Chris, as a segue, you know, it's important how we recognize others and even help others who have helped us throughout our career, our journey. And at Nuance, we actually have just launched another season of our mentorship program, and Nuance Networks is another opportunity that we have to build a sense of community, and we'll share a set of resources at the end of this discussion. Now, Chris, as a researcher, who's helped to be your best allies, and what's your approach in being an ally to others?
Yeah, so trust research to come in and just talk about the complications of everything. And one of the things I've been thinking about answering this question is this idea of the glass ceiling. And this, what it means is that as you go up the hierarchy, there are fewer and fewer women. But the reason it's glass is because we can't see it. We don't know what the problem is. We don't know. You can't point to one thing and say that's what's keeping the women back. And the way that this relates to allies is that you can't necessarily trust what people say. You have to go by what the outcome is, by their actions. Do they actually help you to achieve things, or do they just talk a good game? Because people are really good at saying the right things, and they even, probably most of them, have the best intentions. I would say most people, nearly everybody has great intentions, but sometimes the subconscious stuff gets in the way. So you kind of have to pay close attention to figure out who's supporting you. In the opposite, when I'm being an ally, there are two ways in which I really think it's very important to be an ally. The first way is always praise the women around you. Do it loudly, do it in public, do it as often as you can. Support your female colleagues, your colleagues of color, because a lot of times those people don't get praised publicly. So do that. And then the second way is whenever I'm given a platform, I will always say loudly and repeatedly that this idea of the best person for the job is a trap. We work in an industry where 90% of the people are men. So when you think about who is best at a job, chances are you're going to think of a man. Overwhelmingly likely you're going to think of a man. But we know that women, people of color, we don't do things the same necessarily as men. We bring other things to the table. We bring other experiences to the table. We do things differently. And there is more than one way to be good at something. So if you're comparing to this standard of this perfect male, we're always going to come up short. So you have to sort of open your mind, and you have to hope that your bosses and higher ups can open their minds to this idea that women do things differently, but they're still good at it. There's more than one way to be good at something. The reason my word is shard is because for Women's History Month, the more we talk about successful women, the more we talk about the lives of successful women, the more likely we are to see ways of being good at a job that doesn't look like the 90% men that are doing the job. Thanks.
That's powerful, Chris. I mean, so many thoughts, and folks in the audience, please feel free to add, anything in the chat. Have you felt this, these different feelings, or questions that you might have? it's not easy to implement change. We all know that. And, progress, it's really hard work, right? And Anu, we would love to hear from you. When have you felt most challenged with implementing a change in the organization, and how did you overcome it?
Yeah, I mean, let's just say it like it is. Change is really uncomfortable. And, oftentimes there's a natural sort of resistance to that change. But it's the only way to push forward, right? And that's why, as Chris was talking about, what is the glass ceiling? Why is this happening? We have to try to think about, well, why is this so uncomfortable to have more women in the workplace or more women in tech? And so in this past year, one of the things that we had to deal with as an organization is move to a different agile process, which aimed to reduce the complexity of dependencies between producing and consuming teams. And it really required our entire organization to pull together and get on board to adopt this new process. And there was a lot of resistance, even myself included. I was hesitant to really make the leap here, but ultimately we ended up implementing small changes incrementally that made the change process much smoother. And I think that's what Agile is, right? So my advice is to keep an open mind, and you might find yourself in a better place than you were before, even though it is scary.
And I want to say I agree with Anu there. Change is hard. And as program manager, I've experienced working in the same transformation, trying to bring that change in the organization. And what has worked for me is taking baby steps. We talk about being agile today a lot, and agile does not only imply software development. We have to be agile we have to think agile in everything we do. And to bring about that change, we have to think about small changes that we can work with, especially people who are resisting, and see how they're responding to this change and continually improve towards the goal, especially when the goal is huge.
So Jessica, can I add something to
Absolutely.
To this? So I agree. Change is hard, and change has different dimensions. One is when there are certain processes and certain innovations implemented through process. And embracing it is hard, because if you have been working in some kind of environment, in some kind of bubble for years, you feel comfortable in your bubble and you really don't want that change. And it goes back to my think big concept. It's okay to be uncomfortable. This uncomfortness brings you to think differently, to change, to embrace something which you really don't think that you would like to embrace. And to my experience, the global change in Nuance, which started about 2 years ago, and it's still happening, was similar to this. The whole restructuring of the company, changing how we think, changing what this company is, was extremely uncomfortable. And I remember how many people actually who I knew quit their jobs and went to a different place because they were saying, Nuance will not be the same place that we used to work. And some of us, or most of us, who stick around and witness this change, going through this whole transformation, I am really surprised, to be honest, and excited how this changed us. For example, the fact that we have a global R&D organization, that research and engineering are together as under same umbrella. The fact that the company has these conferences which were only research oriented, and now engineering is also intervened into these yearly Nuance conferences where we all talk about our project, what we do, and how much this buzzing and bubbling is happening during these conferences. Though I'm very sad that we're having we had 2 conferences in a row remote, and I really hope at some point we will be live conferences and we will get more to know each other and more collaborate. And the fact that we have internships at Nuance, which is becoming a big part of our life, bringing new blood, I would call it, to Nuance, it's a change. Was it comfortable in the beginning? No, but it's so exciting to see the results and to be part of this change. This is one aspect. The second aspect is, again, because this is Women's History Month, it's the change how women are sort of moving at Nuance, how women are perceived at Nuance. It is changing. Is there a glass ceiling? Yes, of course it is. But I think it's getting better. It's getting better, and more women are recognized. I see more women in the specific leadership positions, which makes us very sort of inspired and know that even though there is glass ceiling, there are certain holes in that glass ceiling that you can poke around and see what is happening outside.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, this is truly like celebrating all these different steps, you know, even with this discussion today, you know, all of the introspections is very, you know, helpful for all of us. In tech, you know, we have often, like we've talked about, the best and brightest minds working on solving these complex problems, and how you get your voice heard and rallying the team behind support of this. Gianna, what's your approach on this?
Yeah, I definitely appreciate this. I think the first thing that comes to mind, you know, one about being there, being at the table. I think that, you know, I put my word as representation. I know that a lot of us have encountered, like, as we kind of move up in our careers, being one of the only women in the room potentially, or one of the minority in the room, and like just being there feels presence alone. But I think the really important thing to keep in mind is that you've been invited to the table for a reason. Chances are you have a perspective that is necessary to the discussion at hand, valued to the discussion at hand. So really not being afraid to speak up, not being afraid to like have a perspective, is something that I still work on daily, but is, again, important to keep in mind in these places. You know, you said the best and the brightest people are working on these problems. You're one of those people. So it's important to keep that in mind. More generally, I think my answer here is kind of twofold. I think, you know, like I was saying before, empathy is an incredibly powerful skill. If you can understand someone's perspective, you can appeal to them in a way that speaks to them. And generally just people are selfish that way. And so if you can kind of get their perspective, it helps them rally and align with you a little bit better. Secondly, again, a large portion of my job as a UX researcher is moderating and facilitating conversations, kind of bringing people together through conversation. And I find that, you know, in a room, especially in a room of a lot of people or leaders, there's kind of 2 types of people. I see a lot of generators and a lot of synthesizers. So generators are these people that keep going bigger and bigger and bigger, and often kind of snowball an idea into something, you know, completely out of control. But they're really great at coming up with all of these ideas. And synthesizers can really put those guardrails around this kind of endless generating and bring people back to earth and bring their ideas, you know, together in like summarizing those key points. And again, getting us towards our goals. So a lot of what I do is trying to understand the room dynamics and be able to play both sides of that, the generator and the synthesizer, as necessary. And that can be really powerful in helping direct the conversation and kind of moving people along a way. It takes a lot of practice and again, trying to understand the shared goals. But, you know, I think everything comes back to being, you're there for a reason. Make sure that you're kind of using that appropriately.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm thinking about it myself, and maybe others are. Who might you be, the generator or the synthesizer? or, thinking about that as you head into different discussions. I love that definition.
Yeah, it's important to play both sides sometimes. Sometimes you want to be the generator. You want to be part of the people that are coming up with ideas. It's important to know when we need to pull it in and make sure that we are kind of still moving forward.
Great. Chris, as a researcher, surely you're surrounded by this, in terms of complex problems, and how do you approach this?
Yeah, so I have some thoughts. The first is that you may never know if people are listening to you, if your voice has been heard, because oftentimes people aren't going to say, hey, that's really good, we're going to do exactly that. Or they don't. Maybe they don't agree with you. They don't do what you say. And how do you know if your voice has been heard? You kind of don't. You have to, as Janice said, just know you're important to be there. But one of the things that impacts this, that's kind of really important to understand as a woman, is that one of the things, okay, I have been told in every setting I've ever been in that I talk too much, every single time. And I was going to say that in sort of like, oh, well, that happens. But the truth is, it hurts my feelings every single time. It doesn't feel good. But lately, I read something that helped me feel better. And that is, this group of people looked at performance reviews. And what they found was that only 3% of the men were told that they talk too much. But 76% of the women were told that they talk too much. So now I know I am in good company when I am told that I talk too much. And that makes me feel a lot better about it. The other statistic, the other study that I think is really interesting in this regard is there was for a while this received wisdom that women talk more than men. Women talk all the time, men never talk. And then they looked at the actual data. And even when women talk less than half the time, we are perceived as having talked too much, taken too much space. It's one of the things that as a woman you get to deal with. I get to deal with. And it's no fun, but what I want all the women out there to know is that we support you. You are in good company. Please, if you get told you talk too much, just know that it's not you, it's them. And yeah, and don't try and fight it. Is as Janice said, you're important, you're there for a reason. Work through the cultural conditioning that says not to talk. That's my answer.
Chris, would love to hear what your thoughts are, especially as we live in the COVID times, everybody working virtually, how does that manifest, digitally?
It's really interesting. I really thought, for me, it actually helps being online because I'm fully remote all of the time. So if everybody is remote, then we're all pictures on the screen, we all get to talk. When I was the only one not in the room, it was a lot more difficult for me. But I did read a study that was released yesterday that says people who live in the intersections of gender and race, people who have an intersecting identity, are actually experiencing more harassment during this COVID time. So that is really interesting. I mean, it surprised me. And so I do think we need to maybe reach out to our colleagues and try and figure out what is happening, how that's happening. So for some people, COVID, not good. For me, it actually worked in my favor. But I did, and then the other thing is sometimes in COVID, sometimes when we're remote like this, I just jump into a conversation and then, as I say, spend the rest of the day going, oh no, I talked too much.
Yeah, it is hard. I mean, but I think one thing that's interesting of all of this, of what we're talking about, is the introspection, right? And that we are mindful about, even these topics and even having a full discussion about it. And I keep saying that, but it's really, really true and really great to think about that. So as my last question, I want to open it up to the audience. So very interested to hear what questions you have in the audience is about the future. And Shweta, what excites you most about the future?
I love this question, and I think I'm going to answer this question in twofold. One, I like everything about our future, and I want to show this book that I read to my daughter every now and then. She persisted. We all know where this came from. This is where my word comes from, persistence. It does not only ground me, but it's a constant reminder of the challenges women before us went through, how that happened, or how that helped us to be where we are today, and all the challenges that we are going through. We've heard it from the entire panel here. People listening, they're also thinking the challenges they're going through, and how our challenges, struggles will help the next generation of women leaders, our daughters. We are playing that role. We are being the role model for them. So I keep thinking where our next generation would be 10, 20, 30 years down the line, and it's a positive picture for me. It makes me happy. If we can come so far, next generation is going to go farther than this. And personally, I want to share my fair share of challenges I experienced growing up, what a girl can do and what a girl cannot do. And I defied all those challenges. I'm like, I'm not going to think inside the box. I'm going to do what I really like doing. And I want to share that experience with my daughter so she learns that it is okay to challenge me. Do what you feel like doing, what you're really interested in, and tech or not tech. When it comes to tech, we all know that the use of technology is just going to keep increasing in the future. And we've touched this point, Jenna and others, that it is very important to have a seat at the table to bring our perspective, because a majority of the consumers of technology are women, and we will be consuming technology in the future. So it's important that we bring our perspective. It's important that the technology that is delivered serves the entire population. So I feel like we will continuously get that seat at the table. The world is opening more and more. It is becoming a norm that it is okay to have women in tech, and they bring a fresh, different perspective. Yeah, so I feel like there's a lot of potential in the future for women, tech or not tech.
That's great. And what would you say? What excites you most about the future?
So, same way as Shweta, I was thinking when I think about this question, I have two faults to answer. Number one, what excites me about the future, the young engineering and research talent that is just bubbling in this industry. I remember at some point in my career, we got to the halt that very few people were going into computer science. There was this time, I don't know whether people remember this or not, right after .com bubble burst, there was this time that, especially in US, there were very few people going into software and into computer science. And I was really worried that, is it the end of this? And now it changed. So more young people are embracing this as a career. Not, again, we all do it for money. I understand we jump into the place where you can make more money, but these people want to make a difference. And that's what excites me. I work with interns, and I am very fortunate at this stage in my career to be surrounded by younger engineers, because I'm a technologist and I always interact with the younger engineers, male or female. And that excites me the most. The belief that the future is great. These people will, whatever I had in mind and I couldn't accomplish, they will take this and continue with the vision. That's one thing. Second thing is the artificial intelligence. What excites me is this whole game changer of artificial intelligence that happened in this last 5 to 10 years. Now AI is injected everywhere. It can enhance any system we have in place. You name a system, someone can tell you how AI will make that system better, how it will help the users to become more productive, how it will help the users to solve whatever problem your system is trying to solve. And if you look back 5, 10 years ago, this wasn't possible. We were still in this, I would call it dark ages of AI. Now it's just bursting. But with that comes this responsibility. The AI can be also disruptive. And what excites me about the future, that along this AI, there is this notion of AI ethics, how we can make this AI to solve our problems, but at the same time, not to be disruptive. Think about the AI should think, or I don't know if AI doesn't think, but AI has to consider all the diversity we have, let's say. If you are in a speech recognition world, I have very different pitch than any man in our company. So women, their pitches, the dialects, and there are other aspects of AI, how, let's say, this diversity and etc. has to be considered. Whether we want it or not, AI is based on the training data. We humans produce that training data. And the ethics, what is the quality of the data we produce? How we perceive these different aspects of our society, or different, again, I'm going back to diversity, how diversity injected into this training data, that the classification algorithms will behave and produce the best AI possible. What I'm excited about future, that lots of great minds of this industry are thinking and asking these questions. And the big tech thinks about this, because they are the trendsetters, and big tech is just thinking about this. That's what excites me.
Yeah, and just to sort of say, like, the thing that excites me is the same, but that we're thinking about these things ahead of releasing these systems. That we've had some pretty surprising results that hurt people badly, that are already injured populations. And now we're thinking about these ethics issues before we release systems, before we injure the already injured. I think that is a really hopeful thing.
Yeah. I remember as a child, I was fascinated with science fiction, and I kept reading Isaac Asimov.
Yeah,
and he has these 3 laws of robotics. And that's what, when I was reading about as a child, you always think, will this ever happen? These robots who shouldn't hurt the human, should behave in the same way. Now AI, this factual robot is not there. This is in our minds. It impacts our thought process. It impacts how we sort of embrace the world. And I'm glad that someone was thinking about these laws, and hopefully this AI will turn having its laws, or maybe no laws, but just changing a little bit.
The thing I think is really interesting about it is that the humans who are creating these systems right now, the way that the systems work is they just reflect their creators, right? They aren't thinking on their own. This artificial general intelligence, I will argue, and I will argue it might not happen at all. It's definitely not going to happen soon. There are people who disagree with me. But the truth is, right now, the systems we build reflect their builders. And so maybe the builders need the 3 laws. I won't harm another human being. You know, these things, so that we build systems that don't hurt people.
Yeah.
But and one other thing, just because I talk too much, is I too read Asimov avidly as a child. I wanted to be a robo-psychologist. If you want to know what that is, Google it. I have degrees in psychology and computer science because that is what I wanted to be, and no one built me robots that I could psychologize. So I was very sad about it. But then I recently reread an Asimov book, and oh dear, the everyday sexism in those books. I was like, dang, you really didn't like ladies much, did you?
Well, it was not a female author, right? So
yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's just a really great point. I mean, we appreciate like all the diversity we have, and even we want it more from the creators, right? And that's why it's so important to have this diversity of not only, you know, the you know, gender, but also, you know, of color, of roles, right? If we were only one, like engineers, all in, you know, one particular engineer, and not having user experience, product understanding, you know, research and business, it would be, you know, a very different outcome. So we're definitely, you know, we're very excited to see if there's any questions in the chat. Nayla, do you know if there's any? We would be happy to answer these.
Hello. Okay. There is some fabulous, there's a great conversation and some wonderful comments, and I was going to pop on just now. Let me just start with some positive comments that came our way. Give me 1 second. So we have one positive comment that says, thank you, Chris. Sorry. Your shared comments remind me of when my parents, oh wait, hold on. We're climbing the Grand Canyon. That was a wonderful comment, but I want to get to questions. I apologize. I'm going to skip over that one. Kristina, as a male ally, I appreciate you talking about how we can help be a stronger voice. Ladies, thank you so much for this. So proud to be on the same team as all of you. Truly great job. Love it. Sage advice and thoughtful dialogue. And then I'm going to read you a couple of questions that you can address. There is a question that says, for those of you who have children, mainly girls, how do you teach them about STEM and how to fight the stereotypes that tell them they are not great in these fields? Here's another one that.
Why don't we take that one? I think that's a great one. Yeah, and then we have that one is a very ripe one.
Go ahead, Jessica. Sorry.
No, go please, Chris.
Because Anna and I both raised girls who are grown. I have 2 who are grown in their 20s. I really wanted them to learn to code. I really wanted them to try it. I thought that they would enjoy it. I love it. I am really good at it. I thought they could try it and be really good at it. And neither one of them did any of it. So it's kind of, I almost feel like I should have been like, no, you can't write code. You're not allowed, to see if maybe they would have done it just to spite me. But they still, I don't know. So my thought is, sorry, maybe.
So on the flip side of Chris, I have 2 little girls. One is 3 years old, just about 4 years old, and one is 9 months old. And I look at them and I'm like, how am I going to craft this experience for them? Like, what can I bring to the table to give them? It's not that I need them or want them necessarily to be scientists, but I don't want them to be afraid of it or to kind of reject it. And I feel like the same, so my daughter is just about 4. She's already starting to do math problems at the table, at the dinner table. And it's really, really fun and so exciting. And then I see her do the same thing, the same power struggle we have with food is if she gets something wrong or she doesn't want to do it, she just kind of shuts down. And so I'm like, again, working through all the psychology of it. I think it's a day-to-day battle to figure out where you're going to go and what they're going to get out of it. But it's the same psychological, like, how do you kind of encourage them to do something without like pushing them too hard? I don't know. There's a lot to unpack there.
And there's a lot to fight. It's not an individual, right? It's not something that we can do only as the parents. We can't be fully responsible for how our kids experience the world. So there's a lot that's out of our control. There's a lot that, I had a fight with my daughter's school to try and get her taught math. They wanted to, I don't know, it was calculus versus statistics. I wanted her to take calculus. They wanted me to stop being a tiger mom. And I was like, but she can. And I want to, why is this such a battle? Why is this hard? And then my husband finally emails and is like, well, maybe calculus for her. And they're like, sure, sir, anytime. So it's, there's just society you have to kind of argue with too.
I agree. I think to Jenna's point, I have a 3-year-old daughter, 3.5, almost 4, and it's a constant thought process. Like, what do we do to expose her to all aspects of STEM, outside of STEM? And I think more than us trying to teach her, she's been asking 5 whys. Like every statement we say, they're like, why? And it's making us think, how do we get to the science of it? And I thought I'll get her a book, a National Geographic book on why for kids. And it's randomly, we pick one page, why do popcorns pop? So, or how does sun or how does moon work, by different stages of moon? So I think this small changes, small topics of discussion, day-to-day intelligent discussions in the household on why does something happen, even the small stuff, why does the ball roll like that? So just trying to think outside of the box and how to bring STEM into the life. And sometimes it helps. Sometimes we cannot answer all the why questions because we ourselves need to go back and learn, go back to school and learn some stuff. But it's fun so far. We don't know how it's going to pan out 10, 20 years down the line. I can only think of what I want her to do this summer.
Jessica, what do you think?
Oh, well, my girls are 6 and 9. And, when Shweta, when you were showing the She Persisted book, and I was thinking about there are times where I don't wish my 6-year-old was so persistent, but we teach them like a no limits, you can do anything you want and there is no boundary. And we expose them to all kinds of fun projects like rocketry, and RV cars and, building stuff. And there's so many amazing things and opportunities there are today than we had as children. I think growing up, it was kind of, I had my boy cousin hand me down cars as like toys. And, for now, there's so many opportunities, so many different classes. And the opportunity of COVID to actually, for my 9-year-old to learn a lot of coding, she's actually designing different applications that she's probably progressed a lot further than she would if she wasn't, doing, school at home. So it's quite an interesting landscape that we have. I think it's really important that everyone, no matter what discipline you are in, that you're tech literate. You have to be. There's no question that tech is a part of everybody's life, right? And so I think everybody needs like a base education in technology, in coding. And I wish I had more, experience that I could, sort of be arm to arm with Anne, but and so I think that it's ever important to continuously learn and appreciate all of it. And I think expose, our next generation to as much of it as possible. So, yeah, Janet.
I want to add one more thing to this, sorry. There's a book called Brave, Not Perfect, and it is about women generally being told they have to be perfectionists, they have to be perfect, you have to be on your mark. And it's geared at like how to kind of get at this younger generation and make them kind of change their mind, like, or change their perspective. But it honestly helped me a whole lot with a lot of things that I've worked through as well. The idea is like, boys are told to be brave. They're okay. It's okay to fail. It's okay to try. Just keep going. Keep going. Like, failure is fine. And women are not given that same message. And so again, with my girls, I'm trying really hard to be like, nope, you have to keep trying. You have to be brave. Failure is part of this, right? Like, don't shut down. Just keep going. I highly recommend the book. I had seen the speaker at a conference recently too, and it was really, really powerful and empowering to kind of think about it from that perspective.
It goes on. So I want to, sorry, Naila, are there more questions? I have lots to say. Anyway, go ahead.
There are many questions. Do you want me to go to the next one?
Yes, more questions.
Excellent. So also good. Thank you, guys. The next one is, we talked about challenges, but also optimism. What has changed for the better that makes you optimistic? How do you see it in daily dealings?
I'm going to let somebody else answer because
I think a lot of things. Just thinking about how we persist and how we challenge ourselves and people who work with us, how our voice is considered equal, how our opinions matter. That gives me a lot of optimism, to be very honest. And I see a lot of men around me who have come a long way when it comes to, yes, there are no limits for you guys. When I say you guys, women, like you can do what you want to. Not that I am looking for their assurance, but it's a positive feeling that it's normal, like it's okay. We are not doing anything outside of the norm. There's still questions about can women do this or not, but we are challenging that. I see that women are in each and every field. We are astronauts, and I can't think of any field where women are not engaged. They're not doing what men
presidents even
traditionally. So
sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you.
Yeah, I think the optimism is extremely important in this case. And what probably excites me every day, that every evening you get frustrated. Yes, everything you do, our job it's a high stress job. Whether we want it or not, whether we admit it or not, it's a high stress job. And in the end of each day, if you just step back and think, there is this things that went wrong or you got stressful, but every day there is something positive that happened. It can't be all negative. So when the next morning you wake up and look into those two small positive things that happened previous day, that gives you excitement and energy to continue. Because if you think only about the negativity, and I think it's applicable to life too. You can't just focus on the negativity. I know you have to analyze why certain things happened and sort of try to embrace or change or just admit it happened and let it go. But these small positive things that can bootstrap you every day, I think that can make your life more exciting.
Definitely. Celebrate your successes. Oh, sorry, Anu, you were going to talk.
Sure, Chris, I'll give you the stage in one sec. I would just say that optimism is a huge part of success because, whether you're, exuding it or not, people can people can feed off of that optimism, and people can sense it in a lot of ways that you wouldn't even expect is possible. And so when you approach meetings that you don't want to go to, or you'd rather be doing something else, I always try to say, okay, let's try to reframe how I'm thinking about this, and maybe I can learn something from it. Maybe if I bring optimism to what I'm doing every single day, people will feed off of that, and it can be really a change agent for more productivity.
Absolutely. All I was going to say was celebrate your successes. Otherwise, only bad things happen to you. Those are your choices.
Yep. And you get out, you get back what you put out into the world. So the more positive energy, the more positive products, whatever it may be, that you put out into that world, it will come back to you. And it might not be right away, but I truly believe that in karma, and certainly optimism is a big part of that.
I love that. I think that's so wise. And I think about, we talked a little bit about this before in the discussion around support. And, a lot of times this can feel lonely when you're on a hard, you're hitting at a hard wall and you have these problems at the end of the day. But that support is important, right? And who can you reach out to? Who can you kind of help you get to a brighter moment? Sometimes it seems really hard because you're in the thick of it, but seeing those bright spots, no matter who, from different walks of life, it's helpful.
I was just going to jump.
Nayla, I know we're almost out of time, but maybe we can have one more brief question.
Exactly. So I was going to jump in with one more brief question, and there were a couple around this, and I'm just going to read it. It says, I'm a hiring manager and I'm struggling to find any female candidates. I found some diversity in terms of cultural background, but all male candidates. How can we do more to attract younger female and BIPOC candidates to even get into the hiring pool? So if we can just spend a couple of minutes on that, we'll wrap up.
I have thoughts, but the thing is, I'm not a hiring manager, so I don't know how these things work. But it feels like outreach is the answer, not waiting, not just sending mass emails and expecting somebody to get back to you who doesn't really expect that your company is necessarily going to hire them. But to target it, go to universities that are women, all women, and see what their CS people are doing. Go to universities to HBCUs and talk to people there and push for them to apply to your company, and make your criteria reflect the diversity you want in your team. So if you say that we only take people who went to Harvard, we only take people who went to an Ivy school, then you're going to, by necessity, your pool is small.
But can I add something? Because yes. I'm a hiring manager and I hire a lot. So one thing that, and we all do the same thing. We as women do not apply to a job until you satisfy every single criteria of that job description. So if the job description has 20 criteria, you don't even think about applying if you satisfy 17. You don't. That's what women think. Men, on the other hand, if they, then I'm not profiling anyone, but just this is how things are. If they satisfy maybe 5 or 6 of that, they apply to the job. So what we can do if we open specific jobs, maybe in this must list, then when we put 30 different criteria that we want to find that perfect candidate that will fill the job, maybe we can become a little bit loose. Maybe you can put, let's say, 2 criteria that are very important for this position. The rest you can put in this nice to have criteria. Of course, you might get too many men applying, but this will open the door to the diversity, because the diversity is very, very cautious. You only apply if you satisfy. So just let's open that door. I know it's hard. I know you will get too many resumes that you have to decipher through and read and reject and etc. But if you are really keen to find diversity, to fill the diversity pattern, please reduce that must list, must requirements. That will help lots of women to apply.
I'm going to jump. Oh, sorry. I'm going to jump in really quick, Jessica, and say we need to wrap. It's at 11.
Thank you very much. Yeah, this discussion has been great, and thank you all for joining in and listening. And we'd love to hear from you as well. If you're in Nuance, feel free to reach out to any of us, and even at MassTLC, we look forward to future events with you. Thank you.
And sorry, Jessica, thank you so much to Jessica for pulling this panel together, and the content of this panel, so heartfelt, so many lessons learned. I will send around a email. This is recorded. We'll put it up on our website. You will be able to access through recording, and I may grab some questions and comments off the chat because they were worth mentioning. We just ran out of time, and just want to say thank you to all of you and to our panelists for all the time you all put into this. Thank you, Nuance. Thank you all, and have a fabulous day.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.